So somebody messaged me today talking about how I'm promoting a translation that's written by Shia. I was like, what is this? Let me check into it. One, I laughed. This was ridiculous. But two, this is a great opportunity to show you how fear can be used to promote things that are un-Islamic. Every time somebody messages me something like this, I delete it because I understand in depth. And by the end of this podcast, you will understand in depth why I would do something like this is for you to understand that emotion is a key step in brainwashing you, okay? And in this podcast, I'm gonna go through and show you the 4 reasons why fear, this emotion, is used in order to actually cause destruction, to remove you from closeness from Allah, to remove you from the deen, and to actually follow your nafs and your ego and follow in the path of waswasa rather than actually keeping you secure. So this is how the mind manipulates things, and everything, my loves, always starts with the mind. And I just want to clear this up because I'm telling you, any sort of habit that you're trying to do, any type of thing that you're trying to do in your life will not work because this one emotion is standing in the way. And as a religious person, somebody who follows this deen or wants to follow the deen closely, you are going to be the first one that's going to fall victim to this one emotion. So let us dissect it. I'm going to list all 4 of the reasons right now, and then we're going to go into it one by one. Number 1, it promotes suspicion. And this is something that you should be running away from. This is a command within the Quran. Do not come close to suspicion. It is a sin. It is very clear. But for some reason, we justify it, and I'll show you how we justify it. Number 2, it causes an us versus them mentality. It feeds the ego and it feeds waswasa, which is very common within religious people. And that is why you see a lot of people who are self-righteous or they have this whole group thinking thing under lock. And this is not supposed to be what happens to religious people, but that is what happens. Number 3, it uses fear to make people small-minded. It creates their own cage for them. They assume that they're keeping themselves safe from the other, but in reality, it is not safety. It is fear of the unknown. It is insecurity. It is lack of knowledge that keeps themselves from gaining the beneficial knowledge that they can get, even if it's 1% that could increase their iman. And last but not least, and this one is my favorite, it is that their truth is not grounded in deen. We already saw within the Quran, it says, do not assume. But it is social conditioning. It is society that has taught them all of this stuff, but they have used the deen as a way of justification. For instance, have you ever met a Shia? Are all Shias the same? Are you aware that a majority of Sunnis do accept Jafaris? Where did they come from? Or is this belief about that group coming from the fact that you had one bad experience with them? You had a lecture that you heard in which you were dissecting them. Or what happened to me when you run into these lectures and you're like, oh, everybody's Muslim, but they're wearing all black. And you're like, this Islam don't sound right. Early days, I didn't know what I was doing. Or have you read that news article or that video of them whipping them? Has that gone into your psyche to the point that you have concluded that that one part is actually what determines everything else? And as a Muslim, I find this such a hard thing. I don't understand, as somebody who has survived post 9/11, how you are able to make assumptions about other people's faiths when you have seen how clearly, how easy it is to manipulate and say all of these bad things about like the prophet, all of that stuff. We see that, we live that on a day-to-day basis, but we're willing and able to actually make assumptions about other groups of people without actually knowing them. More importantly, have you read it? Have you given it a chance? I have done this, okay, for 7 years, every single page of the Quran. And the fact that it has been revised multiple times by multiple scholars. More importantly, have you seen the other side? How are publications happening, especially that are coming in from Saudi Arabia? The literalist interpretation, how did Saudi Arabia even become Saudi Arabia? How did Israel even become formed? Do you understand? There is so many different levels that requires you to dissect and have enough information, but it is easier. It is so much easier to label people, to call them names. But you know what's hard? Putting in the work. Trying it out, opening a book, feeling uncomfortable. So I'm just telling you, be careful. So we're going to go into detail of this just to let you know the details of this because this is such an important concept. So let's go into like the core message. So number 1 is for you to understand that fear, especially of people, creates suspicion, not clarity. This kind of fear-based thinking, don't read that, don't trust them. It isn't strength, it isn't ghaira, it is waswasa. And shaitan thrives off of suspicion. And that is why the Quran directly says, avoid much suspicion. Indeed, some suspicion is a sin because you're making an assumption based off of what you think that you know. And in the current day and time in which we live in, we don't know nothing. I'm telling you, we have absolutely no relationship with people in order to dissect and find out whether they're doing the right thing or not. How much we're able to actually keep private and not let people see because we don't have community. We don't see the same people every single day. Honest to God, like this always makes me so sad when I go to like grocery stores And I don't see a single person that I know. And that's because I can choose to go to this Kroger or like to this other Walmart or some other store, and we don't have community. How can somebody know you when so much of it can be hidden privately? And more importantly, we have our phones in which we can do all of these like sins and stuff like that, but nobody can know. It is all about who you are. It's about individual world. The world has changed and we need to understand that. So when you have a suspicion about somebody else, you're assuming that you know them. That's the first assumption that has to go through you in order to understand this. But we don't even have the basis. At least, in the olden days when the Quran was revealed, they had community. And still they were told that suspicion is a sin. Like, you shouldn't do that because you're making an assumption. This is a mental thing. You take everything that you sense with your five senses, right? What you see, what you hear, all of that stuff, and then you make an interpretation of it. And that is where emotion comes from. That is where fear comes from. Number two is this us versus them mentality. And this is so toxic for us because this fuels the ego. And this is such an important thing if you know anything about Islamic history, if you know anything about diplomacy and how the Middle East was taken over, how Africa was taken over. It is divide and conquer. Whenever we take ourselves and we divide ourselves into all of these sects, right? In the sense of for outsiders, not for inside, right? We need to work through all our differences in order to come to a basis where we understand each other. But when it comes to Islam, Shia and Sunni are categorized as Muslims. But there's a specific reason for this. The reason why is because of the 5 pillars, right? Do they pray? Do they believe in praying 5 times, fasting, all of that stuff? Do they believe in it? Okay, it's about belief. More importantly, if somebody is praying 5 times a day or fasting, you don't know. You do not know. Let's get to the root of it in the sense of an individual. Group-wise, we can make judgments, but when it comes to individuals, we cannot make judgments because even if they believe it, are they following through? So their character does not match what they say they believe. More importantly, humans are complex. So when it comes to the Sunni school of thought, it's about the belief. Now, there is a specific sect in which, there's this whole takfir concept. So that's kind of different. But you have to really realize the amount of media propaganda that has gone into Islam. Y'all do not realize this. That has caused us to really literally hate each other, even though we have more similarities than we do not have similarities. Same things with Christians and Jews, right? I'd rather listen to a Christian and a Jew than to other people because they are similar to us. Why are you going to throw the baby out with the bathwater? I don't get that. I really don't get that. In the sense of just commonality of belief. We have so many things, 90% or something like that, right? 80%, 70%, 60%, I don't care. It might as well be 1%. There is one thing that we agree on and we will have our friendship or our conversation based off of that 1%. But that doesn't mean that I have to follow you 100%. And I think that's kind of the new age kind of thinking because of the world that we were raised in, right? We came into this world not knowing anything. So the standards that are set are based off of what the world feeds us. So in this case, it's the influencer hero theory, right? All of these influencers that we have online with social media era. And before that, we had celebrities and stuff like that. So we see parts of people's lives and we assume that we know everything. So when you're creating this us versus them ego-fueled mentality, you're creating group thinking. You're creating tribalism, which is a huge thing. Spiritual pride. This is not deen. This is not deen. When it comes to my perspective of how this works is, when it comes to individual versus group, I judge them very differently. When it comes to, somebody who's close to me versus somebody who's distant from me. If you're distant from me, we're good. We're going to congregate around the fact that we have that 1% in common. And then the rest of it, I don't have to follow you just because I'm friends with you. That's the biggest problem with social media for me right now is the fact that you become Facebook friends with, that was my age. And then Instagram friends with all of these people. And then you see a whole other side of them. You were friends with them online because what? You went to an event with them, you went to college with them, you took these classes with them, and then you see this other side of them. I don't need to see the other side of people. And that's why I only have business accounts on social media, by the way, now. When you have a business account, they only talk about that one value, that one niche that they have. But when you start mixing in all of these other parts, it gets more complicated because human beings are complex. That's how reality works. Humans are complex. So even if you're a Sunni, you could be that bad thing that you're always scared of that the Shia have and vice versa, okay? It works like that. But our brain loves to think that we are safe. The world is unknown, and that is what deen is about. That is what faith is about. That is what man is about. Trusting that the unknown is there and that you will be okay. Number 3, fear shrinks your intellect and your faith. When you let fear decide what you can read, what you can learn, who you can learn from, you're not guarding your deen. You're caging your own heart. And we are calling it safety. It doesn't make it true. What it is for me, honestly, as soon as I see this comment and why I deleted, I wanted to explain on this is the fact that this person lacks intellect. This person doesn't know the whole full picture and believes that where they are is safe. That's not true. We're never safe. But at the same time, we're always safe. So like life, the more you learn about it, the more you interact with diversity of people and how things work, then you start realizing you cannot make judgments. Judgments are so hard. Judgments are your perception of how reality works. And until you're able to accept that and digest that, you will create a false safety. That false safety is way more dangerous because you're making an assumption and you're ignoring, you're creating cognitive blindness. And that's why a lot of religious people have a problem because they see the truth. Now we're going to do, us versus them mentality. So now the only evil can only come from them, but never from inside. Never from me, never from my family, never from Sunnis, nobody that looks like me, not my sex. When you start thinking like that, you're literally ignoring the reality, which is that human beings can get pretty messed up, okay? But so when you create that mentality, what you're saying is, I'm not going to deal with that part, but you assume that the part that you're dealing with on a regular basis is not there. And that's why you see a lot of religious people, even like, the Catholic Church, why they have like a lot of problems within their religion. Same thing here, because we're not teaching about the inner sciences. And we're so focused on about the outer sciences, so a lot of people are able to manipulate the outside. Personality, from the Greek word, it's a mask. And people are able to flip that. Like I'm reading a book right now about the law of human nature. And it talks about narcissists and how they are so good at this. Like they can just put on a mask. And that's because the inside doesn't match the outside. So as an individual, it's very important that you double check that. Are you saying that this fear, right? Fear them, fear all of these other things. Don't read that. Are you creating a false safety or is it a true safety? Where did you get this information from? So that leads us into the next point, that truth is not inherent. It's studied. Let that sit with you for a minute, because the reality is that you are born into this world not knowing a single thing. It is somebody in the world that teaches you what's right and wrong. You don't really know it except through experience. But a lot of the things that we do, like about 95% of it is going to be subconscious, which means that we do things habitually, and that's what I focus on, based off of the belief systems that we have adopted from our families. So for somebody who was born in an environment that is abusive, they fear a lot, right? Or if they grew up around a lot of news, they watched a lot of TV all the time, their family talked a certain way, their family went through something else. There is a historical sense of fear that has been generated for you, prepackaged for you, that you have inherited. If 95% of everything that we do, and the reason that we do it, for instance, not praying 5 times a day is because your family didn't teach you how to pray 5 times a day, okay? Then how is it that we can be judged? And this is why. This is because the conscious mind makes up about 5%. Unfortunately, in the modern day, we use this conscious mind in order to do what? Worry. The conscious mind is supposed to help you bring the subconscious mind, bring it to the forefront and dissect it so that you can learn again. Neuroplasticity, you guys, we are able to unlearn and learn, but we don't put in enough time to unlearn all of that stuff. So majority of your life is going to be unlearning it, especially if you grew up in a toxic world. And a lot of us do. This whole environment, we're like sponges. You need to understand that. We're absorbing all of this drama and this chaos that is around us, and we are internalizing it. We're using that information as a way of how we see the world. So unless you're able to kind of go through all of that stuff, and you need to put in work. You know what? Why do you pray 5 times a day? Why are you supposed to be fasting? Because you're supposed to be unlearning all of the drama crap, I'm sorry for the lack of word choices, that's all I could think of, that we have inherited, and we need to unlearn that. So in this specific case, have you actually read the translation? I'll tell you, I read it for 7 years, line by line. There's nothing off. And I know the system of the mainstream Shias, absolutely nothing in it is contradictory, but it doesn't follow the literalist approach which I personally like. I would go through Tafsir Ibn Kathir, and that's what I used to do. But also, it's so similar. He just is willing to be a little bit more out. And honestly, the reason I like him is because he's a British Indian, honest to God. Why? They understand English, okay? The rest of us don't. Africans don't, Arabs don't. From my perspective, we don't understand English. When it comes to, as a translator, how are we able to translate the words? So that's the biggest thing. But have you actually read it? No, because the fear has created a mindset block that doesn't allow you to do that. Have you looked at the scholars who have reviewed it? Do you know the sanad behind their madhab? And it's so crazy because I was like, okay, let me look it up. And people are like, I'm Shia, I've never heard that before. But the majority of us, and this is about that subconscious thinking, is that do you believe just anything that's handed down to you? Anything that your parents have said, all of this stuff, all of these TikTok clips, that one experience. So now you start tainting the whole group based off of that one experience. And this is a sign of immaturity. I'll be honest with you, okay? I'm in my 30s. But more importantly, I've lived in the world. Like I was born in Ethiopia and then I came here. I've seen a lot of different things. And the biggest thing, I always talk about this all the time, or actually I don't talk about it, but it's in my masterclass if you want to go get it, is that my whole world of Muslims crumbled when I thought this one perfect, she had everything right. Like she had her family life, her Islamic knowledge, everything, her jab, all of this stuff, all right. But she committed the most heinous crime. Why does that happen? And from that day, I haven't stopped. The inside matters. I'm going through Surah Baqarah right now. And it's just fascinating how that's related, especially if you're focused on the Arabic translations. I don't even like translations at this point. I'll be honest with you. By the end of this, inshallah, I am fluent in Arabic. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I understand the methods. That's what I learned in my classes, so I know how to do that. But more importantly, I've read the Quran cover to cover for 7 years. And I can tell you, labeling people is extremely easy. It's so easy. You can be like, oh, that person is this. That's what they tried to do with the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Isn't it like, oh, he's a madman. He's this, he's that. You can say anything about any person. Number two, you don't have to hear or worship anybody. Just 1%. Get what you need and get out when it comes to, like, relationships, right? Relationships should be beneficial. You're gaining something from them. So if it's that 1% you need to gain from them, get it. Get out. Done. A little gangster, but that's what I tell people. When you're getting married to people, I was talking to my cousin, just like, I don't know if I can love somebody. What do you think it's all about love? It's about beneficial. That's what marriage is. He gain something from you, you gain from something from him. Like, that's how it's supposed to be. And then you create a family and you provide. It's a lot of giving, but at the same time, it's not for zero. And I'm not here to protect your bubble. I'm just not. I'm here to invite you to think deeper for your sake, because creating a cage for yourself and going on the day of judgment and being asked, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you use your senses? Why didn't you see? Because the veil will be lifted on that day. And you're like, because somebody said so. What a sad excuse is that going to be on the day of judgment? I'm just saying. So every single day I judge myself based off of that. And the Quran is my thing. And I love that people don't realize how religious I am. That's like my favorite thing. Like, I would never have these kind of conversations with like friends and stuff like that, because religion is supposed to be sacred in the sense of it's a private thing. If you fast, if you pray, nobody knows. We don't live in a religious society on top of that. It's just the face that you show to people that people know about. However, who you are and how you feel about yourself and how you perceive the world, that's something that you have to live with every single day. More importantly, that's what you will be called to account for on the day of judgment. All right? That's the whole sense of responsibility. So work on yourself, my loves. And if you want to know about how to work on yourself, because it's really easy to be like, oh, I believe it, but believe it takes time. Even if you have fear, I'm not saying that I don't have fear, okay? I didn't come to this level overnight. I've had to put in a lot of work. And that's the beauty of this thing, literally reading this. The people, the believers, are different from the non-believers. Why? Because they're not kafirun. Kafir is somebody who hides the truth. And what hiding the truth means is that you have a seed and then you put it in dirt and you cover it up. So you know the truth, but you cover it up. And that is what fear is literally doing. The type of fear that we're talking about is like, you see the truth that everybody is not right, but you cover it. You use it as a protective measure. Just watch yourself. We say we're one thing. We say we believe in something, but it is life and your experiences and how you react to them. That is why action is such an important part of the deen, right? With all of the other religions, it's like, just believe in Jesus, you'll be saved. But the action part purifies you and shows you who you really are. It confirms the belief, and the belief confirms the action. And it all plays in with each other. Of course, there's a lot of barriers and things that we need to go through. I'm just talking on a belief sense, not really on an action sense. But you know you're on the right path when those two work together. Do not dissect yourself into pieces and say, just because I look the part, I don't have to think about the inner sciences. You have to think about it. Everything is interconnected. It is faith, Muslim. It is faith in Allah that dictates whether you get into the habit. And it is the lack of faith or the rejection of faith that detects whether you see the truth or not. So it's just so fascinating. Inshallah, this was helpful for you. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and peace.